Please pray with me. Lord, take me where you want me to go. Let me meet who you want me to meet. Tell me what you want me to say, and please keep me out of your way. Amen. Please be seated. I shared my sermon last night with my daughter, and as my children often do, they give me a hard time. And she said, "Gee, Dad, it's so short, no one's going to have a chance to snooze." I don't think of it as short. I think of it as to the point. Jesus jumps right into this gospel reading from Mark, making shocking statements. In the verses prior to this one, he asked the disciples, "Who do the people say that I am?" And then he asked them, "Who do you say that I am?" And Peter, good old first to speak, Peter says to him, "Why, you are the Messiah." Jesus then begins in today's reading, the first of 3 times in this section from Mark, mentioning his coming suffering. This is the very first moment that he explains that being the Messiah means suffering, death, and resurrection. First, let me say that Jesus himself uttering these predictions in this way is his way of affirming that the suffering and death that are to come are not some tragic accident of history. Things didn't just get out of control, you see, nor is it a negation of God's plan, but indeed willed by God that the Messiah would suffer and rise again, and that Jesus would accept this course in his life. But to declare this to the disciples, just when things are beginning to get good, this is the juicy part of the ministry. Because you see, miracles are happening. Crowds are showing up. New followers are joining their merry band. And Peter, oh, good old Peter, talkative, fast to speak Peter, who often served as the spokesman for the disciples and by extension for us, does what he always does. He speaks out. His words are silent in the Gospel of Mark, but in the Gospel of Matthew, he says, "God forbid it, Lord. This must never happen to you." Such a human response, isn't it? Who amongst us would not have said the same? Your friend, your dear friend, the person that you believe to be the long-awaited Messiah, has just said that he will suffer at the hands of the leadership and then die. This is all so shocking that they might not have heard the after 3 days rise again part. Because after all, what does that mean? Who rises again after 3 days? How could someone who walks on water, heals the lame, teaches so much about God, end up tortured and dead? Too much to understand. But this reaction of Peter and the disciples goes beyond just personal affection for Jesus. It's not just the response of a follower who does not want him to be killed. Peter's conviction, you see, of what should be, what his image of the Messiah should be, is being shattered, you see. His mind is literally being blown at this moment because everything he has grown to know about a Messiah is being turned upside down. Instead of taking Peter's words as concern, Jesus snaps back at him with those famous words. "Get behind me, Satan," he says. There is a cosmic conflict going on, but it's the furthest pole from any "the devil made me do it" ideas that might be cropping up in your mind right now. Our understanding of Christ is always related to our understanding of discipleship. Now, by now, y'all know well how I like to study translations, and I'm fascinated by words and all their different meanings. The Greek word for "to get behind" also means to follow. I love that. So when he says to Peter to get behind me, he is reminding him to follow. To get behind someone means to follow them as a disciple would. Peter and all the disciples were motivated by love and admiration for Jesus, but they were unknowingly trying to prevent him from fulfilling his mission. So in this understanding of the meaning of his words, Jesus' rebuke to Peter and everyone is actually a renewed call to discipleship for them and for us. But Jesus is not satisfied with just getting people to get in line behind him. No, not at all. He calls us to action with the statement, "Take up your cross and follow me." Now here Jesus is reaching into the future just a little bit. By the time that the author of Mark had written this gospel, Nero was the Roman emperor. We've all heard that famous line about Nero fiddling while Rome burned. But true or not, Nero was not a nice guy. Christians, including our outspoken Peter, had been crucified in Nero's gardens for his entertainment, hanging there as Nero would walk amongst the palace grounds. Mark's original readers did not have to imagine what Jesus meant by his statement. In his day, you see, taking up one's cross could literally be the cost of discipleship. Can you imagine who amongst us would have believed and followed Christ knowing that that could have been the price to pay? But now, this statement illustrates for us ultimate submission. Not one big dramatic act like crucifixion, but more like one day at a time, as Christ's disciples give their life away one day at a time in service to others. But our world tells us otherwise, doesn't it? It tells us to take care of ourselves first. Get all you can. Be all you can be. Live this life to the fullest, no matter the cost to the earth or to our fellow man or to the future generations. Christ, as the crucified Messiah, reverses Peter and everyone's expectation of what the Messiah is to be. He gives us a whole different meaning. He reverses our common sense values of what a successful life is to be about. And the question for me from today's gospel lesson is a simple and direct one. Whose vision will we follow? Our own or Christ's? You see, folks, Christ is asking us to lose our self-centered determination to be in charge, to get behind him and to follow. Plain and simple, you don't get much more direct than that. Get behind him and to follow wherever he leads. Amen.